1.
Good morning, everyone. We are here at Justice Involved podcast, and we are live on Maggie's Outreach Facebook page. And today we're going to be discussing our North Carolina Second Chance Month, and we will be discussing our barriers to connections. And our topic of discussion is going to be our housing and the lack of resources and some of the barriers that we're facing with our formerly incarcerated and our justice involved within our rural area of Rayford, North Carolina, and how we can assist them with reaching those connections and breaking these barriers for our housing. Our panel this morning, I would like to first introduce our CEO and president of Maggie's Outreach and our IA for the local ReEntry Council, Miss Ophelia Ray. And then I have Miss Bernice McFadder. She is the coordinator for the local ReEntry Council. She has been doing that for over 4 years now. And to her right, a man that needs no introduction in this community, Mr. our commissioner, Mr. Harry Sutherland. Glad to have you here with us. Ms. Davis, she is with us today to discuss some of our issues that we have facing our barriers with housing, and to lay down some of the common sense and the factors. All right. And then we have with us from our Grow Source. We made our connection with him on the 6th with our chat and chew.
Correct.
Mr.
Ben Israel.
Ben Israel. He has a wonderful team, and his organization is gonna assist with our connections with trying to knock down some of these barriers we got going on around here.
Yes.
So we'll start today. We'll start off with our leader and IA, Miss Ophelia Ray. We have our proclamation from the governor, Mr. Ward Cooper, and we want to introduce that to let us know that this North Carolina, this ReEntry Month is not anything new to North Carolina. It's new to some of the people out here, as understanding. But he has a proclamation that he issues every year to push this initiative. Ma'am?
Great. Good morning, and thank all of you for joining us out in our social media and our local. Certainly, we welcome all of you who are here at the table for this discussion. We know how valuable this discussion is to our community, the community of Hoke and Rayford and our surrounding counties. So I am thankful for our Blue Springs economic developer being here, Miss Christina Davis, who's a legacy in the county and an expert in the housing issue. So we're so grateful to have you join this conversation. And as Mr. Peterkin said, our county commissioner, who is an advocate for the needs of the people in our county. And around the table, Ms. Bernice, Mr. Peterkin, Grow Source, who we just began to partner with. That is what, meeting him in Charlotte a week ago, and he wanted to be a part of this conversation when we were at the Second Chance conference for 2023. And so the governor has set forth in this year's proclamation, and I just want you to know we're not going to take a lot of time, is that the proclamation states that whereas the vast majority of the individuals currently serving sentences in prisons and jails in North Carolina will eventually return to communities when they leave incarceration, and not securing a stable home life, employment, transportation, and health care upon community reentry can lead to recidivism.
That's right.
It can lead to health, safety, and social concerns, and additionally, negative outcomes. And whereas a youth with a history in the juvenile justice system may face difficult circumstances when leaving a secure custody facility, such as reuniting with families and peers and integrating into their home communities and enrolling in the local educational systems. And Local, state, and federal leaders recognize these barriers and continue to develop programs and policies to make it easier for these justice involved individuals to lead healthy and successful lives. And whereas North Carolina State Reentry Council Collaborative, the SRCC, and state and local community organizations are implementing efforts to help the formerly incarcerated with their transition by coordinating reentry planning and initiatives and identifying service gaps. And whereas providing resources for the formerly incarcerated as a community wide effort among local reentry councils, faith based organization, and state. And whereas investing in Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, as well as education, vocational programming, and therapeutic treatment services for justice involved youth, creates savings in victims, societal, and justice system costs. And whereas the cumulative effort of reentry professionals, as well as advocates and volunteers, helps to reduce stigma and provides the formerly incarcerated with increased opportunities and a greater chance of a successful reentry into their communities. Now, therefore, I, Roy Cooper, Governor of the State of North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 2023 as Second Chance Month in North Carolina and commends its observance to all citizens. So we, the citizens here in Hoke County and around the table, acknowledge and have set a platform throughout this month that will have awareness and and recognize the barriers. And this conversation starts off and really jump starts our month and recognizing the barriers. And I'm so grateful because we know that if an individual has no home, we know that if an individual has no secure place to lay their heads, all the other resource options may not be affordable to them. And so today, as I turn this back over as the IA of Maggie's Outreach Community Center here in Hoke County, we are the IA and our local reentry council and those who sit on our council board. We're really, really grateful for this opportunity to come live before you and to allow you to engage back with us. So as we move forward in this next hour, I invite you to share this platform and let others know that we're here. And if they have a question that we can't answer today, possibly we'll be able to get to you and you'll be able to get to us. Our office is located at 109 North Main Street, downtown Rayford is the reentry office. If you know someone who needs to be a part and needs services through the reentry process, please contact our office. The number is 910-565-2299 extension 2, 3, and 4. We're here and we're ready to hear from you and to share in this wonderful opportunity with our community today.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. That proclamation was very important, and as everyone heard, and all of us sitting here, some of the key words that was in there: barriers, restrictions, and those are the things that we constantly see within our area when dealing with the clients. As Ms. Ray said, I've been at this for the last 2.5 years. Ms. Bernice been at this for the last 4 years. And coming in and having her as a mentor and learning this, I've learned that you can never overlook some of the serious consequences that people are facing. And these men and women, and even our youth, sometimes when they're coming home, they're facing these barriers. Some of them, we find that we almost have to bring them back to life. They come home, they have no identifications, they have no IDs, no social security cards, no birth certificates. That stuff get lost in their transition between prison and coming home, and those are additional barriers. But one of the biggest things, the first thing we always get when we hear from, whether it's the probation or the prison counselors, the first thing they say is homelessness. That is the first thing that they say to us, and it's very hard to find um, those connections to finding a place for them to live. And my first question I would like to pose to the panel is, it kind of falls into what Ms. Ray just read from the governor's proclamation. What role can the government programs and subsidies play in supporting affordable housing development in rural areas? And what are some of the potential drawbacks to relying on these initiatives for our justice-involved population?
I guess I would offer to start the conversation is that many of the barriers that we see are systemic. They are created within the system largely because they've not been challenged. The conversation about accessibility and affordability for housing, particularly as it relates to our returning citizens who have been justice involved or formerly incarcerated, we've just not had the way or the opportunity to do the kind of advocacy in a very coalesced way that shifts the balance around the systemic issues. So when we talk about some of those barriers, we have to talk about ban the box that's implicit in the system. You know, on housing applications, folk who have to check that box around their history of being involved, justice involved, don't get housing. That's a real way that we have to do some advocacy. And in rural communities, we historically lack the kinds of supportive agencies that make that happen. Public housing authorities. In terms of eligibility around emergency housing vouchers, those entities make the decisions. If we don't have them in rural communities to offer that in terms of accessibility to our client base, they're not going to have it. So that's as we begin to really look at what's happening, we have a real role to play as coalesced advocates, building an interagency base of collaboration where we bring all of the resources that we have to offer, our elected officials, our new partners like GrowSource, into the picture.
I look at the situation as like a table. A table has 4 legs, and each leg, one's going to be employment, one is housing, one is education, and then of course your health services. And when one leg is missing or falling, what happens to that table?
I believe it's going to fall down.
And that's what happens to the individual. So I'm glad to be sitting here and having this conversation, so we can expose and solve and maybe just make people think.
And I would just like to add, as the coordinator, it's almost like the first point of contact begins with me in the prison in terms of trying to establish what supportive services the clients are going to need when they are released. And about 75 to 80% of individuals who are coming home generally don't have a place to go. And I do agree that we need to bring the partners to the table and the elected officials and community individuals, but it seems to me that for dealing with the issue right now and taking care of the situations of homelessness now while we're waiting on those things to take place, there needs to be some sort of communication with individuals who are willing to do shared housing, where they would look at the possibility of possibly renting or shared rooms to individuals. Because for one, you're right, when they come home, they're limited in terms of education, so their work skills are very limited, and they go into some positions not making enough money to pay for an apartment. So we're looking to find resources where they can feel independent, but be able to afford $500-600 a month for a room versus $1,700-1,800 for an apartment that they definitely don't have. So the housing is really important, and getting all the people to the table as we move forward. But for me, the issue becomes, where am I going to put you when you come home right away? You know, and connecting, for me, a shelter. You know, having a shelter where we could possibly look at putting our clients in would be phenomenal for a county of our size, because we can't move them when they come home. They're released on post-release parole, and so they have to finish their sentences in the county where they reside unless we can get their probation switched. So if we could look at some things like that, would be great for me.
And I'm glad you kind of stepped into that. And before Commissioner Sutherland actually addressed the question itself, you said some things that he's actually already doing. We said our elected officials getting involved. We picked up the phone and we gave him our issues, and he answered them. As an elected official in this community, he went out and he took that as a personal endeavor, and he started that mission. I'll kind of open the floor for you to go ahead and if you want to address that, and then kind of address what Ms. Bernice had to say.
Okay. Well, first of all, good morning. Thank you for the invite. I think that it's important that we're sitting around a table to discuss these issues. Like the gentleman said about the table, you got 4 legs on it, but I would think that the most pressing leg would be the leg for the housing. Because if you don't have housing, like Ms. Ray said, you really almost cannot get a job because you don't have no legal place residency. So it's paramount. And so this is where we got to start. So when I was talking with Ms. Mafata and Mr. Peterkin about this issue, I took it on as a commissioner, as an elected official, and I want to look for solutions, because we all know what the problem is, but we need some solutions. One solution was that we came up with was we're looking at some shared housing where we are in the community now, working with folk who own housing or abandoned housing that we're trying to rehab. So we've probably got about 4 or 5 housing now that are going through rehab, that we're trying to get them up and running so that they would be fit for the men and women, because we're not going to mistreat them by putting them in some type of dilapidated home. We got to build their self-esteem back up. So we cannot treat them bad. I mean, we're implicating them. We'll be implicated if we treat them bad coming out. So we have a responsibility as elected officials. The other thing we're working on, and we have money in the county, thank God. 20 years ago, we probably couldn't say that. 20 years ago, we probably couldn't say that. But God has blessed Hoke County with resources. So we're looking at a shelter. And I think that's going to come in this actual fiscal year, 2023, 2024. And lastly, we are doing a Hoke County Housing Authority. And Ms. Christina Davis McCoy has been pushing this issue ever since she moved back from up north. And her and her brother Jim Davis. So in this particular budget, we're looking at putting together a policy to enact a housing authority for Hoke County. And then what we're going to do with that housing authority. And I don't take no credit for that. I give credit to her for advocating for it and never getting off of it. You know, when you being very persistent, because sometimes we'll talk about an issue, then we move on to something else. But this is critical. Now, Hoke County, in terms of growth, with the 5 counties around us, we are the fastest growing county between Moore, which is very wealthy, Cumberland, Robertson, Scotland, Hornet. We're fast. We're growing the most. I would say,
5 times greater.
Absolutely.
5 times.
So we're growing so fast that we're growing on a state and a national level, where we are listed. But that growth does not take into consideration our reentry people or our poor.
That's right.
So we are receiving a lot of military defense contract residents moving in. So the average cost of a home right now in Hoke County is $266,000. That's the average home. They go higher than that, much higher than that. So to move in Hoke County now in a decent home, it's about $266,000. Okay. Does not take in consideration our reentry folk or our, I would say, indigent or our poor. So we got to put together as elected officials and nonprofits, organizations, somehow some resources for them. And so that's why we're putting together this housing authority. We're going to be doing some affordable housing in 2023, 2024, and we're going to take some of these old houses that are abandoned and we're rehabbing them. and we're putting money in those houses. And right now, as a short-term fix, me and Ms. McFadden and probably Mr. Peter can talk weekly about Harris. Some people are coming out now. We got 2 or 3 people because they're being released.
Right. Yes.
The governor said that in his proclamation that these people are eventually going to be released. So we know they're coming out.
Yes.
We got to prepare for that. So if we don't prepare, it's our fault. So we got a responsibility, and I'm taking it upon myself to work closely with these 2 people to bring some housing to Hoke County.
That is great. Thank you, Mr.
So what?
No, go ahead,
Just
man.
like a
Yeah,
follow-up
absolutely.
question. Firstly, for Miss Christina Davis, and then I have a question for Commissioner. When you were talking about where we are and what the housing was intended to do, and I think Commissioner Harry answered some of that. What do you see all the barriers, the barriers existing that are holding our reentry citizens from taking advantage of what exists now? Because we want to talk about what exists now. What are the barriers that are not connecting them to safe housing now?
Well, I talked initially about the ban the box piece because of what exists on the housing applications for individuals who are returning. The absence of an available stock of housing. And I think the commissioner addressed that in terms of shared housing strategies. In rural communities, what have happened universally is that churches tend to come together and provide a network of housing for individuals for immediate access, which might dovetail into the shared housing concept that the commissioner has mentioned. I'd have to hear a little bit more about that, but I'm excited about that. Also, I think that what we see is that there are federal properties that could be restored and space set aside to make sure that housing is available. That's a strategy that's being used nationally, and it's something that rural communities are going to have to address. However, that's augmented and supported by public housing authorities, which I'm pleased to hear is coming online here. That's exciting. But also, I think the federal government is getting the picture. They're understanding that as we talk about the systemic nature of barriers, that they have a role too in easing the pressure, becoming the advocates and allies as well. And the new HUD Secretary, Secretary Fudge, is on top of this. And just recently she announced 2 new layers of funding. Funding for Housing Choice, which provides the opportunity to retrofit these federal HUD properties, and we've got Lantern Lane and other older stocks here that can be renovated and use some of those resources to make sure that that's there. We can also look at these for-profit developers and encourage them to have set-asides within the developments for affordability. That's going to be critical. And we can also look at the new money around continuums of care that provide opportunities for us to partner, all of us at this table, to partner and become these interagency constructs that make sure we get the resources to do what we need to do for families coming back into the community.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yes, no, absolutely.
One real issue, and me and Ms. McFadden had a conversation about this, in terms of the immediate need is funding. So when I go out to the community, like I do on a regular basis, I speak with homeowners, and they're telling me that the funding to bring someone in their home or to rent them their home is not sufficient. So the money, the funding is lacking. So hopefully the funding can be increased to be an incentive, because a lot of people would do shared housing. A lot of people would take some of their homes and rent them out. But they're saying, and you know, we met with someone in their own home. And the first thing she said to us was, it's not enough to take care of the home when there's damage to the home.
Damage to home. What was it? Electricity,
Right.
cable,
Right.
and
Right.
Utilities.
So we have funding. So we got homes now that are really not on the market, but because the funding is not there, they take them off the market. And you know, realistically, we can't blame them, because they don't want to go in the hole giving back.
That's right.
You know, so when we talk to them, I understand that because you can't just say, well, you ought to give back because no, you know, you can't give back and hurt yourself. You know, so we can't ask too much of these homeowners and landowners to give back if they're gonna go in the hole, so to speak.
So I want to speak to that as the intermediary agent for our local reentry council. Maggie's Outreach does have the authority, and we are constantly making applications. However, the Department of Public Safety just changed from Department of Public Safety to Department of Adult Corrections. And so we are currently on a month-by-month contract providing services. So what it would require are if there are other entities in and around our area who says, I'm going to funding to the agency that will help provide the supportive services, understanding that the state departments have certain guidelines and restrictions to utilize the funds that they do bring down. And so they have not increased that. Now that we're a county that has been operating a council for the past 3 years, and we're going into our 4th year, and we're still one of the 28 or 14 reentry councils in the 100 counties in the state of North Carolina. So it is our hope, and we have been aggressively seeking funds. So there's levels of funds. So the state tied their funds to client services only, and they tie the funds to emergency housing and a certain amount of rentals. So and we have to identify the need to employ. So it's not just providing housing. We have to have individuals who are willing to put programs in their housing.
Okay.
So that means that if you have certain clients who you reached out to are owners in the community, and I'm constantly always telling individuals, put a program in your house that you're going to identify for resources, then you may be able to apply for funding that maintains your house outside of what we do as a overarching council. So I wanted to really bring that out, that no, there's not a plethora of funds right now, but we have a vision for our next FY 23-24 to layer services that would bring additional fundings in. But certainly what my focus is as the IA, we've reached out to United Way, we've reached out to PNC Foundation, so we've reached out, but in the housing arena, ownership of these houses cannot be charged to the state. You understand what I'm saying? So how they run their houses, how the houses are managed, it cannot at this time in the contracts that we have be charged to the state. So I am always encouraging implementing rules, implementing a process, implementing times that individuals are coming in. So it would be a great conversation for us to move forward with if you have a set of individuals who are interested to discuss those options, and being the county commissioner, certainly we're planning to seek more in this appropriation of dollars that are not tied directly to our state dollars, that would allow us to say, if our client damaged a house, that we can help, you know, a homeowner. But certainly the state dollars are towards supporting, educating, and linking them back to opportunities. But I think it's a conversation worth having.
Right, I agree.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring that to the table as dollars are coming aboard. The youth that are coming home from incarceration or in a youth facility, they're 18 and 19. Parents may not allow them to come back to their home. There's no local facility that they can go to. Our offenders, our registry is a huge issue that is, I think, is silent in Hoke County. It is a huge issue. And having all of our schools out in these rural areas makes it even more difficult to place individuals in potential housing.
Right.
And those approvals come from probation. If we give them an address, they will tell us yes or no. So I think for those who are listening to this conversation, barriers to connections. What are the barriers that are keeping us from connecting these individuals to housing? And so, I really need to take this off. But so I wanted to bring that up. I'm glad to hear there's funds in the county for a shelter. The housing authority is coming.
Yes.
Urgency, and so I don't know if we have any questions or you have any questions.
I have questions, but actually my questions wraps around our discussion, and as we start talking, we are kind of answering those questions in the conversation, and that's the fruitful conversation. I think is opening the broadness of what we're trying to face, because just ban the box. You know, when we touch on that, you know, and the government housing, the HUD, we have those barriers within those. Like you said, that box immediately removes them from a list. There's no reason to even do a background check.
They no longer become eligible.
They're completely ineligible.
Completely out of it.
And me and Miss Ray was just talking yesterday about government and just those factors of what she just discussed. Felonies, registry,
Yes.
automatically removes them.
That's right.
That it's not even an option on the table for us. So before we even begin our referral process and start looking to our vendors and our supporters, we gotta, it's our large list gets tossed to the side, and then we got a small list, and then that small list is like, no, you guys, you guys got three clients over here now, and you know, and we can't use that person. And then when we're trying to reach out, you know, we're trying to move people to Charlotte, we're trying to move people to Asheboro, you know, we're constantly trying to find, and the fact that we have to remove them from the community and send them somewhere else, that becomes somebody else's problem.
Right.
So now we create a new problem for someone else when we haven't solved our own. So as Ms. Ray said, I have questions, but you guys, just our open discussion is kind of just is getting to those. My next question that I was going to go to was alternative housing models, tiny homes, co-housing, all that.
Yeah.
And as the commissioner, as Mr. Sutherland kind of drew on those, and we was part of that initial initiative. Myself, Miss Ray, Miss Bernice, we were sitting on that initial proposal to draw that in, and how that homeless shelter and domestic violence shelter, how that will help our community, and how we can keep them here and make that available. And we did that, and the fact that we know now, like you said, that it's back on the table, it's open up, and it's something that in 2023 that we're looking to get that connection going. I think it's going to be amazing, because when I look around, not just, you know, I know our discussion is about our justice involved, and that's the most important. But we look at our county as a whole right now. If we was to have a major disaster, our schools is our fallback plan, right? And there's no major structures for people to fall to outside of our schools and things like that. So having these shelters and these structures there, you know, that also provides an emergency for the community, not just our justice involved, but just the people that may lose something, because we know we have people that still live in modular homes, and those storms come through, they'll tear that up. And the fact that the county is looking to that, just not, you know, for our domestic and for our justice involved, but just for the people themselves, it speaks in volumes.
Well, see, there's a real value in having those kinds of structures, because then we're able to physically locate resources, yes, and make them available. In fact, I think that that's a real challenge in terms of people understanding, when we talk about supportive service, what does that mean? Ms. Ray talked about encouraging folk to have these kinds of extra opportunities in the housing that they have available to grow accessibility and affordability for them. But we certainly have to begin to think about it. And of course, in this 98 million that was just released, 10 million exists just to do planning. To think collectively
We need to do a
in
study.
communities and creatively about what we need to do to address these problems. So HUD is there because it is the Housing Development Department, and we need to take access to it.
We do have emergency shelters in the
Okay.
county. The last 2 buildings that we built, the Bottom Right Ag Building
Okay.
is
All
an
right,
emergency
all right, okay,
shelter,
it's
and then the James A. Leach
The
Building.
leach building. Is
Yeah,
gonna be
so
a
what we
shelter.
wanted to do was, because of the fact that for years we've been relying on the schools as emergency shelter, we want to build these next 2 buildings that we just finished that would house people, that would house them during the case of a disaster, of course feed them, and we have storing there. So we have a lot of, and we thought about that because every time there was a major hurricane, Hugo, Matthew, didn't matter. We wanted to make sure that our people were taken care of.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And so we put that in place in those last 2 structures that we
And I
built.
tell you that the leach building, like you said, that's a
Yeah.
that's
They know
a
that.
Yeah.
That's
that's
right.
a
Yeah, they know
luxury
that.
luxury
Yeah.
fallback.
Yes.
A pool and,
Yeah.
and everything.
But I would just echo what Ms. Davis said regarding the HUD money. 2 things we got to do with that. Hoke County is financially stable, and when I say financially stable, every audit we've been passing has been exceptional, which means that when we apply for the money, Ms. Bafata, you know this, one thing they look at is your financial, if you're
Your
stable.
financial position.
So
That's right.
absolutely, so that when we go after grants now, we really have like a 90% acceptance rate in terms of receiving the grants. So certainly we need to come together and partner together and go after some of this grant money, especially from HUD.
Yes.
It's out there. We got an opportunity. This is the best time to go get it.
Yeah, it really
I
is.
agree with that.
And I agree with Ms. Ray as well in terms of our partners. You know, before we were looking for vendors. People are saying, okay, we want to become a vendor. Well, now we're wanting partners because she is absolutely correct. We need individuals who are going to help us provide services to our clients. You know, maybe you ought to have NC Works or another Sand Hills Community College come into the house on certain days to teach courses to the individuals in your house. That would help you generate some other revenue. And those are some of the things that we shared with the last individual that we spoke with about the housing that felt like the price was a little bit too low.
Right.
I said, well, there's some other things you can do because if you are certified to teach some classes, then you have an opportunity to apply for some resources to
Right.
help pay for the classes that you teach.
And I want
So
to
we
say
got to
really
do
quick
that.
about pricing. And you're talking about a room.
Yes.
A room per
A
night.
room.
If an individual, I just want to put this in the atmosphere, has a house with at least 4 rooms, you have 4 persons with at least $35 per night. Typically, you would have only had 1 rental with a $900 a month. You are now multiplying that month by 4. There is nothing to say that you're not getting enough money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if you're in it to provide services, or if you're in it to get rich, these services are not going to make you rich.
Absolutely.
No, they're not.
However,
That's
they
right.
will pay the mortgage.
That's right.
Yes.
So I just want to say
Right.
that if you think about it and you did an analysis of opportunity for individuals, if we sent them to our Rayford Inn, we would have to pay $50 per night.
Per night.
And we could only put them there for 7 days. But if we sent them to your house, we could pay $35 a night and keep them there for 30 days.
30 days.
You're coming out with $1,000 and some odd dollars per bed,
Right.
not your entire house. So we can't argue with a landlord, but we make the proposal based
Right.
on the funding. The annual funding is not there to supplant a landlord to get $4,000 or $5,000 a month on a bed
Right.
for
Right.
a client.
Right.
So that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to see this as a service need. But when you have 4 beds, and I really want to say that even to you, Commissioner, as you're out advocating, to look at the logistics of the costs for these clients. Look at the turnaround 30 days. 30 days later, you got 4 more clients. 30 days later, you have 4 more clients.
Right.
So only if there's an urgency, if a client come out and we have to help them with their Social Security. So we're talking about barriers. So if a landlord sees this as I'm not making enough money, that's another barrier that we have to try to overcome.
That's it.
Well, and education is the key.
Yes,
And
Right.
I think that when you provide a clear understanding and
Yes.
education, it almost has to be written up, and you walk in the room with
Yeah.
it so that you can help
Yes.
people understand it step by step.
Because
And we're
the
willing
bad
to have those
information
conversations.
spread quicker than the good information.
That's exactly.
And
That's
we're really,
exactly the
I'm
point.
ready
Yeah.
as an IA to have those conversations
Yes.
with any particular person that you're reaching out to the community to make clarity, because sometimes it is how it's proposed. But I want to say we're talking about barriers to connection, and then if a barrier is already existing in the community, we certainly need to remove that barrier and provide the logistics for the change.
That's it,
Right.
and that is it. Lack of information is one of the most
Yeah.
critical barriers we face.
And
You
with-
know.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but with that, we'll come back. We'll come right back to you. So we're gonna take a 3-minute break,
Thank you.
and
Thank
then
you.
we're gonna take a short break, and we'll come back and we'll introduce another guest to the panel in that process. But we do have to take that break, and we'll come right back. So please stay with us, everybody that's with us on social media. Stay with us, and we'll be right back. Take a short 3-minute break, and we'll come right back to you with barriers to connection on Justice Involved. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome back to Justice Involved. We are back now. We had our new guest trying to join us today, Mr. Derek Perry. He is with Great American Housing out of Cumberland County.
Yeah, I have a house right now in Cumberland County, but it's not. I haven't done shared traditional housing yet, but it has tenants, but they'll be out of there in the June, and I hope to make that available.
Right, and
but I'm trying to get houses in Hoke County as well.
In Hoke County, and you, if I remember correctly, from the luncheon we had, you are Hoke County. Your family, Hoke County.
My mother's side of the family, born and raised Red Springs.
Red Springs, that's where it was.
Right,
Okay,
just down the street.
So, and Mr. Perry has joined us for our luncheon and is looking to join the team and the council and bringing his resources to Hoke County and helping us kind of what we discussed, connect these barriers and overcome what we got going on. But before we move into discussion, and I'll let Mr. Perry describe himself, I do want to just take a drawback and let our audience know that our host for our podcast, Mr. Roderick Watkins from Shiloh Temple of Faith, he is a partner with the local ReEntry Council, and he is actually one of our churches in the local community who do provide a transitional home for our clients. I want to say 4 beds in his home that we work with on a regular basis for our clients coming in and out of home. His home is located in one of our barrier areas that we talked about. Is close to a park, so it kind of eliminates us. It kind of keeps us from putting our formerly incarcerated that's on the registry into there. But he has housed for the last year and a half. He has been housing our clients as they transition from prison back and helping us out. And actually, some of our clients have become permanent residents in his home and have been additionally helping out with those guys coming in and helping them transition. So he's been providing that resource to us in this community for the last year and a half. And before we get on to any more questions, Mr. Perry, I want to open the floor for you to just give us a little bit about yourself and let them know what you're bringing to the table, sir, if you don't mind.
Okay, I might not be a resident of Hoke County, but I'm right next door, born and raised, like I said, in Fayetteville. My father, 30 years, United States Army, retired there. I stayed there my whole life, pretty much. My uncle, so I'm a bunch of, and I took on this cause mainly because I want to help people. I mean, I have my bachelor's in criminal justice, and I want to help veterans as well. And there's a big population of veterans in here, and they have a lot of issues with PTSD and stuff. And I think there's a stat. The statistics said like 8% of the homeless are veterans, and that's one too many. So I'm just here to. Me and my wife and I, we created a nonprofit to house, to help with because we know there's a housing, I don't want to say shortage, but the affordable housing
There's a shortage.
is bad for even people that have, I hate to say have money. I mean, it's hard to come up with first and last month's rent, anybody. So like if you don't have any resources, how can you come from prison or come from anywhere and then see a nice house or a nice apartment and say, I want to live there, and they're like, well, we're gonna run you credit, we're gonna run this. I need first and last month's rent, and if you don't have it, I mean, what do? I mean, I don't want to say waste it on a hotel, but you got to have income, you have to have resources. So I want to help people get on their feet and start, because with transitional, I want to provide shared transitional houses where people can have a safe, secure home, because if you have that, that's one of the most important things you can have, because if you have to fend for yourself and fight for yourself to survive, then that's a turnstile to go to a life of crime. And sometimes, if somebody's homeless, they're gonna do what they have to do to survive, and that's horrible to say. And in this country, it's a shame, because always say, and I've heard, and I really believe, housing is a human right, and as great as it is, we shouldn't have homeless people. Now, I understand some people make bad decisions, but we've all made bad decisions.
That's right.
And some people have been forgiven, some people aren't. And some decisions, there's no, when you come to like biblical terms, a sin is a sin is a sin. There's no worse sin than another one. But some people have been blessed and some people haven't. And I think family structure and transitional housing provides rules and structures which all people need. And you have community is important, because when my house will have structure, my homes will have a house manager, and they have rules, and the clients have to agree and they have to buy into it. You have to say, look, I'm here to help you, and I'm not asking much. I'm just asking you to come here, you do your job, follow these rules, and I'm going to help you. I'm gonna provide you a nice place to stay, and it's gonna be a nice place to stay. There's some place I'll be proud to stay, because if I'm not gonna stay there, I don't expect you to stay there.
Right.
And I'm gonna provide you with housing, transportation, and I'm gonna do everything in my power to get you a job, because I know you need to work.
Basic needs.
Basic needs. I know you need to work, and then you take pride in that. Being able to come home and go to work, and I'll tell them, I'll go to bat with you. If you come and you stay and you do your stuff, I might not know 5 million people in Hoke County, but I'll go there myself with you and say, hey, this young man, he needs a chance. So he's applied for this job. That's all I can do. I can ask. I can be sincere, and I tell the person, I'm a man just like you, or if it's a woman, I'm a man. I'm a man of my word, and if you give me something, I'm gonna give you something back tenfold.
Yeah. All right. And I'm glad you expound on that, because one of the first things we like to do when our clients come home, before we even move them into employment, as we're looking for transitional housing or someplace for them, we do our professional development, our development with them. And we have a 15-hour requirement for each client as they come in, just to get them to crack, just to break that mold. Because you do have to realize that they are transitioning from prison. It is a structural environment, but it's a structural environment where you don't have a say. So it's get up, go. You don't want to go there, then go into your cell, stay into your cell. And if you misbehave, there's no go to your father's house, go to your grandmother's house. Let's go to the hole. Go to a smaller cell. So what we like to do is we like to break that mold in their mind, because everything is a mindset. Everything starts with the mind. It starts with the transition. And I say that to say this, because when they're coming home, if we don't have that transitional period in the mindset, then they're not going to respect. So as we try to get them to understand that your past is just that. When you were in prison, you're a felon. You're home now. You served your time. You did your crime. You served your time in society. You're back here in society. So now it's time for you to have that second chance. It's time for you to reconnect and restart over and reset yourself. And one of the first things I tell them is, the difference between me and you is that you got caught. It's like you said, we all sin is sin. We all have, nobody in here is unfallible. And we make mistakes.
Mr. Pete, again, like you said, when the individuals come home, unfortunately, let's just keep it 100. Everybody is not going to forget your past.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am.
And so
100%.
therefore, our focus is not on your past. Our focus in the reentry program is your future.
That's right.
And so therefore, I don't have to mention it again.
No, yeah,
I'm going to focus on where I expect you to be in the next 6 months, or the next 12 months, or a year or 2 years out. Because that keeps them. If we're thinking differently, then they're going to think differently. And so I agree with you. You've got to have a good support group in the house, and having a manager, like you said, is going to be phenomenal in doing those shared housing things. But when we had the break and we were talking with Growth Source, we were saying that there are so many other barriers that come with the housing, right?
Correct.
And another thing is when they come home, they don't have a lot of things that they need to even get employment. So we take that opportunity in the beginning of their release to make sure they have an ID, birth certificate, or social security card, because you got to have those things before you can even get a job.
That's right.
Not to mention going to an employer and they're rejecting you because you do have to check the box, which is why it is so important for the LRC to advocate with employers who are willing to hire our clients and not even look at their background, don't do any background checks. So there are a lot of things that we're trying to do within the LRC that makes it a little bit more attractive. But I wanted to hear some of your ideas of what you were saying.
And I'm gonna go back to what Ms. Pittison was saying about giving 15 hours of personal development, and that's where Growth Store comes in.
Right.
You know, you do 15, and we do continuous. Matter of fact, Nicole Gleach, she's our program director. Basically, we have different programs set up depending on what you need, that we can cater to each individual to move them along with critical thinking, behavior, whatever it might be. We have programs set up. Matter of fact, we have an academy. It's called growsource.com. It's an academy to help them out with certain type of learning, because we do know that once you go in, your learning stops at that point. So we want to help you with that. But personal development is key for everything. And the conversation we was having earlier was about, since we are on the inside, I have a different perspective I'm bringing to the table. That for vendors, they are telling us that, hey, just like there's a glass ceiling in the workplace, there's a glass ceiling for people that are doing the transition and looking for resources as in homes. That when they get to certain locations that say, hey, we have homes, for some reason, of course, you know, it's not available. And that's quite a bit of people we're hearing this from. So I wonder how the numbers, how accurate are they? You know, and what can we do to talk to people that own properties that can change their mind if they're worried about people property being damaged, theft, so on. Now, I was putting a program together for vendors to get dealership license, and they had to be bonded. But what I found was they could be bonded by the state. Then I found a program, which is, I'm going to read this to you right fast. I wonder if you can help me out with this. It's called the Federal Bonding Program.
Yes.
And it normally provides employers with insurance coverage for loss due to employee theft or dishonesty. I wonder if it's something like that, or that can be.
Well, that's an incentive that's offered through the reentry program.
Okay.
Any employer that we partner with,
Absolutely.
they are given the opportunity to apply for these two grants. Most of the time, the employers always state that there's so much red tape in getting it done, because it's offered through the North Carolina Department of Commerce.
Right.
You can get this grant if you hire a justice involved individual. And so the companies that we hire that are justice involved friendly, they already know about the incentive grants.
And what I'm saying for employers,
Yes.
how about is there a way that can be manipulated for housing? If some of the property owners are concerned, a bond is a bond. Can we transfer that to a house too? That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, and of course, Ms. Ray stated earlier in the governor's proclamation, which is the SCRR, which is our state reentry collaborative. We're on that council, and so they're the ones that establish the policies and the procedures for how we operate all of the LRCs. So it really is something, good idea. You know, I didn't think of that, so it's really something to consider if we take it back to them and say, look, if we're offering bonds for employment, what is the likelihood that we could offer these same bonds through, and it probably might be something that we could offer through these new dollars that we're talking about coming from housing, because the Department of Commerce offers those to employers because they oversee that employment arena. So that's the reason it's handled through them. But it definitely is a very good idea, and it's definitely something that we need to look at as some sort of bond for individuals that we put there. That's a great idea. I like that.
We got a call coming in.
Okay.
And whenever you're ready with that call, we'll take that call and answer that question. I'll pose that question to the panel.
If he
But
doesn't
go ahead.
have it
It's
yet,
coming in
let me
your-
No,
see.
yep, it's coming in.
Go ahead, you go
Okay.
first.
Well, I mean, and I think that that's exactly where we're headed in terms
Yeah.
of being innovative thinkers
Yeah.
and
Right.
providing
Yeah.
innovative policy.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we have to be the policy makers
Yeah.
because these are our constituents that we serve.
So it's-
And if we can certainly bring a solution to the table, then I think it would be widely embraced. And I think that, you know, the governor has indicated so.
Yeah,
He
yes, sir.
has,
Yes, ma'am.
because he
And-
is justice involved friendly.
Yeah.
And
Very
go ahead with that caller. We're ready. Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? This is Mrs. Watkins. I'm the wife of Pastor Robert Watkins. I'm the property manager for one of the transition houses that we have.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Miss Watkins. It's good to hear from you, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, good afternoon. It's afternoon now.
Oh, is it? Okay, we done lost our time.
Slips into it quickly.
My question is for Commissioner Harry Sutherland. Right now, well, let me go back to the number of beds we have. We have 8. We have
Okay.
8 total.
Okay.
And right now, 4 of those are taken up. And right now, you all were talking about funding. And so right now, we have a client whose housing funding has basically ran out. And so he doesn't have a job. And so we're in this position now where we have to try to find funding for him so that he has that address, so he can get a job, so he can get back on his feet and get permanent housing. So my question to you, Mr. Sutherland, is are there other resources that we can use the church to help this client?
That's a very good question. And right now, we don't have anything that I could think of right offhand in place because it seemed that he has exhausted what was already available to him.
Yes, yes, sir.
I think that's what she said.
That's what she.
I don't have any.
Is
I
that
would have to
correct? Is that
research
correct,
that.
Miss Watkins?
Yeah.
What you was addressing? He's
Was
already
it reentry?
exhausted those resources.
Okay.
And reentry, the local reentry was providing the funding for him.
Yes.
And now that that's ended, there are no matched state resources or federal resources that could be tapped.
I'm not quite sure, you know, for me to interject, but it was her question answered.
Okay.
Because normally in the reentry process, when a client has exhausted his resources, that's where case management and the coordinator is actively making sure that they have a job, and so that they're working and that they have a budget that helps them to outline how they're going to pay for their expenses. And
Right.
unfortunately, there are instances where sometimes the time exceeds the time that it takes them to get a job, and that's for a lot of different reasons. Because if you spend a lot of the time in the beginning trying to get resources to get Social Security cards, that you don't do that overnight. The DMV, everything is a process, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So I think it's going to be key to look at generating those other resources so that when they do run out of our local dollars, because there are limits established by adult probation.
Right.
They put limits. We can only do so many months. Once we have exhausted that, then we can't do anything else for that individual. And housing, we can assist with employment and other basic needs.
Basic needs.
But
So-
Ms. Watkins, we don't want anybody to fall through the cracks, so I would like to make sure that we get your information so we can follow up. But right offhand, I can't think of anything after we have already exhausted those issues. But you know, I never say no because the county have resources and we have friends in Raleigh that have resources. So I would not give up on anybody. So I don't want no one to fall through the crack. But I would like to follow up with that issue that you had.
And in this particular client, I believe Ms. Watkins is referring to, we have tried to reach out. We're reaching out to Southeastern because Southeastern do have those capabilities as well to assist with
And they
living.
get HUD dollars.
They get HUD dollars. So we are trying to work with that. But just to draw back to what, not to take away from your line of questioning, I hope that was answered for you, Ms. Watkins, on the funding side. But in addition to that, what Ms. Bernice said, those barriers do exist. In the beginning, I did state a lot of times we are bringing these men and women back to life, technically. And I say it in that form, in that sense of form, because we have to go through birth certificates. We got to get Social Security cards. We were dealing with, at one point, for a Social Security card, 21 days. 21 days.
And what's the length of time that is allotted?
90 days.
90 days.
90
3
days
months.
max.
3 months, so 90
Basically,
days.
3
So we're
months.
looking at 21 days for the Social Security card. The driver's license, I think the DMV was backed up almost 2 weeks at one point, 14 days. So you start taking that, that's already about a month, almost a month and a half of him just waiting for paperwork.
Just documents.
Just documents, just to
Documentation.
get into
Right.
the
That's
employment
correct.
agency.
That's correct.
And then
correct.
a lot of them, when we do send them out to some of the jobs that work with us and say, okay, well, he has his prison ID, he may have his birth certificate, but he may not have a Social Security card, or one of the two. They'll initially start employment for them and try to get them going, but a lot of those employers are on minimum wage. So that one job may not be suffice for him to pay for the things he need afterwards, and so finding another job and trying to get that income base to establish, like you said before, Mr. Perry, first month, last month, and then security deposit. We can't forget about some people even want the security deposit. So now you're taking 3 months of rent, 90 days of rent, just to get into a place, and that person, it's hard. It's really hard, and the funding. Like you said, we are reaching out everywhere to find these dollars. Southeastern, they were at our chat and chew, our lunching, and she's excited about coming on board and working with us. And we are trading clients back and forth.
Yes.
The Heart Foundation, we're working with her. We're working with several agencies, and we try to find those resources, whether it's the offset, the living expense, the water, the electrical bill, the water bill, whatever it is, we're trying to find those, and
that's why it's so important to bring
important.
partners around the table.
Right.
Because when services run out in one area, as a coordinator, it's important for us to find some resources somewhere else, so we make referrals.
Right.
And
You know,
before we
that they
continue,
do
I
that.
just want to say, Ms. Watkins, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to your additional question? Okay. All right.
Not at this moment. Thank you, Mr. Southern, for answering my question. And you can get my information from my husband, Pastor Watkins, who's already there.
And
Okay,
thank you so very much for your call, and I appreciate you calling and bringing that up, because we haven't gotten to the opportunity to touch on those situations, those smaller situations, I shouldn't say smaller, but individual situations. We were kind of focusing on the broader perspective of the agencies that's out there. But thank you so much for that call and bringing us
a good question.
into line.
It
Thank
was.
you.
Very good
Absolutely,
question.
absolutely was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the
You're
real
welcome.
opportunities
And
that
you all have a blessed day.
And
you
do
too,
the same.
Mrs. Watkins.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, this
Bye.
conversation has provided a real opportunity for the community to begin to understand and hear clear information about some of the challenges, opportunities, as well.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
this is good. This is rich.
And then making sure that we, even when the county starts their process of developing the housing authority, just making sure that those people involved in that process will take into account some of these issues of our clients who are actually coming home, and allow that flexibility to use some of those dollars in areas that we know will benefit our
Right.
clients.
Right.
But I love that idea.
Yeah, yes,
you
absolutely.
suggested. I'm gonna get on the phone when I get
Yeah,
back.
and
I wrote it down too.
this discussion, as Ms. Davis said, it has been very fruitful. And as we have gone over our time, and I thank
Yeah.
our host for allowing us to do that, because as you start talking, you start opening the doors. And
We need to come
hopefully-
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're definitely
Invite
going to
us
have to come back.
Yes.
As this is our pilot, and we were hoping for it to be a great discussion and open up some of these barriers. I appreciate every single one of you being here today and
Yeah.
giving us your time.
So do I.
I know how important that is, especially for the commissioner himself and Grow Source. You guys got a lot going on. Everyone
for
at
the
this
invite.
table is doing so much, and I know it's hard. And I'm happy that we were able to pull this together. And
So am I.
and before we go around and just say goodbye to everybody, I want everybody to reintroduce themselves, their organization, so that the everyone is aware of what's out there. You had touched on the ceiling, and that was
Yes.
one of the reasons behind our logo. I chose that open blue sky and the sky in the line because the sky is the limit.
Correct.
The sky is the limit. The green pastures, having those green pastures in the open field is for a reason. And the sound bite underneath is, I chose every single portion. I thought about it because the word, the voice, before people heard the voices of the people, you had people heard the voice of God.
Yes.
Those green pastures, those open skies, and that's what we want for our clients. That's what we want for the community. We want open skies. We want everyone to understand there is no limit to what you can do. There's no barriers, and if we all work together, we can lift those, and everyone can soar as high as we can
That's right.
we can possibly go.
Yeah.
And I want people to talk to us. I want people to join us as we try to continue this, and we hope that this is very successful with opening up discussions for our community and our leaders and everyone just coming together. So with that, I want to close, and then I want to just go around the room and let everyone reintroduce themselves and their organizations before we leave here.
Yes. Grow Source, and that's spelled GROSOURCE, of course, .com. And I've been to Israel, and once again, we are development. We fill the gap between what we're all talking about here, the resources, and the individuals getting to it and solving the problems in between, being connected.
Derek Perry. I'm with Great American Housing. GreatAmericanHousing.org is a nonprofit that provides shared housing for justice involved persons, people recovering from substance abuse disorder, aged out foster adults, and veterans. That's right.
Yep, there
And
you go.
veterans.
And I thank you for that
Okay.
support as a 23-year veteran. I thank you for that support, and a retiree who suffers with PTSD and as my permanent disability from the service. And like I like to tell people, they broke it. I'm just trying to find ways to fix it. Ms. Davis.
Christina Davis McCoy, Blue Springs Community Development Corporation, a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, and here for the long haul.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Harry Southern, the Hoke County Commissioner. I just want to make a point that housing really is critical to human beings flourishing. And if that falls, everything else falls around it.
That's right.
So that's my focus going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I am Bernice McFadder, reentry coordinator here in Hoke County. And you can reach me at 109 North Main Street, Suite B, round back, upstairs. And our number is 910-565-2299, extension 2, 3, or 4.
All right. And everyone, Shamel Peterkin. I am the executive director for Breaking Every Chain Resource Center, a nonprofit in Hope County, and also the assistant IA for Miss Ophelia Ray, who was with us earlier, Maggie's Outreach Economic Development Center. She's been going on 12 years, I believe, 11 or 12 years in the community, providing those resources to our youth and our children after school, summer camp, and also, like she said, nonprofit, doing it on the backs of the community and trying to ensure that our children have a safe place to go and a safe place to be. And if it wasn't for her and the belief in these programs, myself, Miss Bernice, we wouldn't be here doing this for the last couple of years, and we wouldn't be able to be at the table with great people and great supporters of our community like yourselves.
Yes.
I can't leave without thanking Mr. Watkins, Pastor Watkins, Shiloh Ministry, and his gracious hosting of this podcast and his support for the last year and a half with transitional housing in Rayford. And keep doing this. I want to keep this going.
Let's do it.
And with that, we'll be sending out invitations, and hopefully we could do this next month and keep this going. I really enjoyed this. With that, ladies and gentlemen, and in social media, out there in the public, thank you for joining us. Ms. Watkins, thank you for your call. Any calls that we wasn't able to get to, please put your questions in and on Facebook. We will address them. And thank you for joining us at Justice Involved. And we hope to see you guys in the future with more fruitful conversations for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone have a blessed day.
Have a great one.
All right.
All right.